Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to an exciting another round of Sins 2 gameplay. I'm your host, Karaslegacy, as we continue our round 1 coverage of the 4 Power 2 Balance tournament. Up in the north side, we have the Bankstreet Boys with Deucit, the Teal Advent, and Navio MG as the Vasari on the left. And on the south side, we have I'd Sin for a Solar Empire, with Duque as our blue Advent and NCC as our red Exodus players. We're playing on Crossfire today. This is a 2v2 map that is one of my favorites. It tends to be a fairly tight map, but it has a number of rust passages through the map itself. You have this long kind of map on the edges of the map. That's a fairly clean but long path through. Or you could take some of the inner routes, which have heavy defenders in the middle side, but also some pretty solid derelicts. So we'll see what the players decide to do today, if they're going to rush on the outsides or if they're going to push more into the middle. Now, something to note right off the bat, unfortunately, Navio got somewhat of a bad start with his opener. Getting the dense core bonus on the Vasari is actually a pretty big handicap. A large gravity well means that Vasari ships take a long time to get started, getting out and about. And we can already see that the Navio's ships are taking its time getting out into the field. Now, one interesting play we're already seeing over here from Docet is a push to the ice early. Normally, as you'll see the other players, they tend to take a roundabout direction around the asteroids, getting those quick and easy resources that don't require a lot of push. But Docet, using the Rapture battleship, able to dominate some of the ships, has decided to go for an early pick and take the ice directly. So he will take a good amount of damage on this Rapture in order to complete this, but we'll manage to clean out the siege engines pretty quickly and then start moving on deeper towards south. On the left side, we see, it looks like NCC is starting with a pretty typical push into the asteroids with the Starry Evacuator, also known as the Egg, for those of you still new to Sins 2. And on the left, we have Duque again, started opening with the Progenitor Mothership, which is an interesting choice on such a map. Most Advent players are opting for the Rapture nowadays. It's a really good ship for clearing creeps early, for expanding on the map. And though the Mothership does provide free colonization, she tends not to clear as quickly as some of the other ships and does not necessarily scale as well. So this is a bit of an off-meta pick for Duckett, and we'll see how that serves as we continue later in the game. All right, we're seeing a pretty aggressive path for Dosei up here, pushing from the ice down into the lower asteroid. It'll be curious to see if that continues a path further south, or if we see a backtrack and a refill of the planets behind. Taking a look at our factions today, we see that we have Pranast and Jiskun on the minor faction list. So this will open us up to some turrets, but more interesting is the Colony Seed Nanites. This gives a lot of players early access to strong, aggressive expansions, allowing them to not only expand with any capital ship, but also getting some early developments offhand. So we'll see if some of the players decide to take advantage of that. In fact, yes, it does look like over here Navio has decided to take advantage of the colony seeds as part of that initial expansion. So we do see, it looks like, we are seeing a Desolator opener. This seems to be pretty common on these tighter rush maps. The Desolator provides a huge power early in the game, able to combat almost any other capital ship in a one-on-one basis, and often provides a lot of initial push power. We'll see if Navio decides to use that into a more aggressive opener. But looking over here, it looks like Docet is definitely going a very aggressive style. And with NCC colonizing the asteroid in this corner here, we might see an early conflict come up here shortly. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, we do see it looks like Navio is taking an early auction over here. Uh, he is the only Visari Alliance player in this map, and as the Visari Alliance has an early influence advantage over other races, it simply makes sense that they would be able to secure, in fact, they do, secure an auction this early, pretty much uncontested. It's You basically cannot compete with the Visari Alliance player in influence this early in the game if they dedicate and choose to commit to an auction. All right, now we see NCC in the south is taking their asteroid. It is now proceeding into their ice. This is the pretty standard path for Crossfire, and now it would be a question if Dulce decides to push farther south or seeing the colonization decides to backtrack. It does look like Dulce is deciding to pull back. That's a slight bit of an issue early. This is going to slow down Dulce's expansion path slightly and slow down the econ compared to the other players. We'll see how much of a hit that actually turns into. Let's take a look at some of the other players here. So Duckett has decided to proceed with Tier 2 military decently early. Otherwise, yep, proceeding into military tech with supply. Otherwise, just getting the party started. Has opted in for Clairvoyance Opener. That's pretty typical for Advent players now, giving them some initial scouting on the map. In terms of supply, we're seeing looks like a starting point of Tempest. Again, pretty typical for Advent players nowadays. The Tempest is just such a good overall vessel, capable of handling the vast majority of ships that they would encounter this early in the game. Now, one thing we are seeing over here, you see some team play from Navio. Navio has taken this, but given it to his teammate, Wilson. For those of you who are still getting comfortable with, and we actually see the same thing over here, for those of you who are still getting comfortable with team kind of games in Sims 2, this is a good tactic to learn and to pick up. By sharing, swapping planets with your allies, this allows them to build factories much closer to your territory, and so if they need to reinforce, they could build a military force near you and resupply you much faster than if they have to move their entire fleet across the map. Simply the reality in Sims 2 that moving through systems is very slow. Production is actually relatively quick in context. So being able to have factories, even if you don't use them very much, but having them available to be able to quickly reinforce an ally could be a key game-deciding move that you'll often see from veteran players. All right, taking a look, we now see it looks like Navio is pushing, and Navio has opened up with standard 3 capital opener for Visari. This is a pretty typical build for a lot of Visaris nowadays, utilizing the evacuator or egg, the desolator, and the carrier. And the reason for this is that the Visari's starting exotics allow you to get all 3 of these capital ships without acquiring any additional exotics. You only need the base resources to build these 3 capitals, and they all tend to complement each other pretty well. The egg provides colonization and some area damage. The desolator provides a huge amount of single target damage, especially to capitals. And the carrier provides a lot of healing, capable of healing both itself and your other vessels. So this just makes an excellent team combo and is capable of taking on a lot of other ships. All right, we are seeing a push. Looks like Dose is pushing into the south here. Taking a look at the territory, it looks like there is no defenses here from NCC, so it looks like Dose will be able to push in, at least initially, uncontested. It looks like NCC is actually pushed into the Ferris world. That makes sense for the Visari to want to take this world early. It's basically a home world for them. But it has left him quite out of position to take on these forces. Now, Dose is making an interesting decision here, deciding to push past this asteroid deeper into enemy territory. And likely the reason for it, and we're going to take a look. Yeah, so if we notice, this asteroid has already been uh, leveled up with a number of defense slots, and so the amount of hit points on this asteroid is actually pretty high. Whereas if we look deeper in the enemy territory, the asteroids are relatively easy to take and a lot faster for a single capital ship to siege. But we'll see if Dose takes advantage of that and decides to actually attack this asteroid directly. Taking a look at Dose's tech, yeah, we are seeing a transition into Tier 2 military, but it's a fairly slow one. Influence rise, no real strong commitment here. Just level 1 techs for both factions. And yeah, we do see Dosit here go ahead and sieging this world. Meanwhile, NCC's response. NCC is pulling back. Looks like NCC is focusing on the Conrack opener, which is very typical for Vistari nowadays against Advent. The Advent players have very little point defense or anti-missile capabilities in the early game, and so the Conrack missile frigate is a standard and common opener you'll see Vistari use against them. Now, to counter that, Dosit is focusing primarily on Tempest. The Tempest and the Conrack actually tend to be fairly balanced against each other. Both sides, both types of ships can beat the other. It depends on positioning, numbers, and micro. So both civs are effectively building units that can counter the other, and so it will come down to how each player utilizes those ships. All right, we are seeing, so Dosit has finished sieging the planet, and it looks like it's actually sending his Tempest directly into the home world of NCC. But after scouting that there are, in fact, at least a modicum of structures here, although no defenses, looks like this might have just been for some initial hits and scouting, as Dosit is sending his forces to join his capital to the south. Meanwhile, it looks like we have Navio's pink forces have been repelled by the large forces over here of Ducat. Now, this could be a real problem. We do see this system is fortified with several Gauss turrets, and with only a single capital here. Yes, in fact, the mothership is taking heavy damage from this Gauss. Plus the Desolator. This ship is in trouble. If it does not jump out right now, this ship is dead. It's already crippled. It does not look. In fact, unfortunately, it has gotten ensnared by the egg. The egg's gravity warhead ability, for those of you who don't know, can actually stop ships from jumping out of phase space. It is a little tricky to pull off. The egg has to use that ability before the hyperdrive kicks in, but if you time it appropriately, you trap the ship, and with this amount of damage, that mothership had no chance. We now have 4 Visari capital ships versus about 30 Tempest. This is a non-factor. While Tempests are quite good ships, and in large numbers can actually do decent damage to capitals, the Visari ships regen too quickly, and especially with a carrier to reinforce healing even more, these ships effectively can't take any damage. And so they're going to effectively go and do what they want to do, which looks like they're going to once again push further south. Now we do see, let's see, Ducat is continuing to amass Tempest, but with no capital and just Tempest, and of only about 50 in total, this is not looking good for Ducat. This amount of force is just not enough to keep up with a strong Vistari capital contingent. Meanwhile, looking back over, it looks like NCC is attempting to counter and trying to take back some territory over here. We see about 30 Conracks in the fleet. Yeah, it looks like a grand total of just about 30 Conracks. While that is an okay force against Dosit, who has amassed about 30 Tempests, so that is a pretty reasonable combination. and we will see how the two play off against each other as it looks like they're about to battle. This is wasting no opportunity going directly in against the Conrack forces. And we start with an opening salvo. Looks like the Rapture has dominated one of the Conracks using one of its abilities. And this is a key element of how Tempests are able to defeat Conracks, at least in decent. If the Tempests just stand there taking the shots from the Conracks, they actually do die pretty easily. But what you're seeing here is the Advent player is diving back and forth. This is a pretty simple micro. They're just moving their ships back and forth against each side of the Conrack. This forces the Conracks to continue to move to circle and fire, but the Tempest can fire in any direction at any time. So the Tempest never are losing fire, but the Conrack's fire is being slowed down by this constant need to circle around into it. And we're seeing that result. The Conracks have already dropped down to 18, but the combination of Tempest and the Capital, without the Vasari capital ship here to support, these ships simply can't keep over the fight and are forced to retreat. Now it looks like they may be covering for the Egg, who is reclaimed this territory, Mirren, and is now proceeding further south in Denia, probably to take that back over. Back to the north, we can see that Duque is continued to push with a decent contingent of Tempest. 30 is an okay number, but it is not going to do a huge amount of siege damage. But in contrast, you can see here that Navio has continued to push with the 4 capital ships. And the Tempest numbers that are down here are simply not sufficient to handle this fleet. Navio is going to have full control, and not only has the ability to kill ships and structures here, but with 4 capitals also has very good siege capability. Simply put, Navio is going to be able to put a lot more pressure on this territory than the Ducat is going to on his territory. So in terms of this little base race scenario, Navio has the clear advantage. Moving back over to the southeast, okay, we see another skirmish between Tempest and Conracks. And it looks like the Conracks are doing pretty good damage against the Rapture. But the Rapture is just microing around, again, forcing the Conracks to continue to circle. The circling is the key. That slows down their fire rate. And while that is happening, the Tempests are just chewing through these Conracks. At these numbers, even though the Rapture is going to take a good amount of damage, it might even become crippled, it's really in no danger of dying. This force is more than sufficient to take out this enemy fleet. We do see while all this is going on, looks like NCC has reclaimed Navi here and is retaking the asteroid, but at a pretty heavy cost. I think pulling the Egg away from the Conracks ultimately is going to prove to be a mistake. Without capital ship support for those Conracks, they really had no chance against those Tempest forces. We can see the action continues in the southwest. The Vasari fleet continues to push against small contingents of Tempest, and again is effectively immortal against these kind of forces. These 4 Vasari capital ships literally cannot die against these Tempests. The natural Vasari regen, the combination of that, plus we'll see the repair items placed on the Vasari capitals, and then the repair cloud of the Vasari carrier. All of that combined creates enough healing to basically nullify any damage that these Tempest forces are doing. Taking a quick look, let's take a look at our supplies currently as we look back over the map. So as we look at Sin for the Solar Empire, we have got Ducat at 314 supply. We have NCC is dropped pretty low to 210. Meanwhile, Dose is at 460, still focusing primarily on Tempest, just maintaining the initial Rapture. And then we have Navio with 375. And we see further adding to the carrier composition now, bringing in an additional carrier, additional cap to continue that pressure. So looking at supply, looking at game positions, right now the Bankstreet Boys are pretty much dominating this matchup, and we'll see if. Or I apologize. I mean the I'd Sit for a Solar Empire is yeah is getting pretty big up here, and is likely going to lose this match unless something dramatic happens. All right, we do see another surge of reinforcements here coming out from Duckett, but again, these numbers simply aren't enough. Realistically, these Tempests need to run. They need to either go do some damage elsewhere, or they need to connect with another force. Sitting here just shooting at these capitals, all they're doing is getting slowly whittled down, while the Visari will simply heal up every bit of damage that they're taking. Now we can see here it looks like the carrier's armor is getting slowly depleted, but every moment that the Tempest stop firing at it, the armor simply regenerates with the repair cloud. So we could see this is why, and this is an important lesson for a lot of you watching these to understand. There are certain cases, especially when facing Visari, when they have a certain contingent of carriers or capital ships. Fighting an attrition battle with a Visari is a losing battle. Your goal needs to be either to come with an overwhelming amount of force that could beat Visari carriers, beat the Visari capitals, or to run, to harass, to wait and build up your forces. Like fighting them like this is exactly how this is a losing strategy, and this is how you're going. When a lot of players complain about Visari regen, this is exactly why. So for those of you watching this, do not do this. You want to pull back your forces, regroup. It sucks to have to sit here and watch your forces slowly die, to watch your planets die, but it's better than simply throwing your ships away. Now, meanwhile, it looks like over on this side we have Justin is finally wiped out all of the structures on the NCC's homeworld. Has still a decent number of contingents combined with the Rapture, and right now is in complete dominance as the homeworld is being sieged away. Let's see if with NCC still has a handful of contracts, but nothing particularly too strong. We do see some factories have been rebuilt here on the ice world for NCC. And they do have the Ferris world over here, so income-wise, actually, NCC is not doing too badly. Even though he has lost several planets, he still has now effectively 2 key homeworlds. And so his resource income is actually not terrible. So if he gets a chance to rebuild his fleet, get a chance to regroup, there is a chance he might be able to come back. Now, one thing he is struggling with, though, is on technology. He's lost all of his Empire research and is stalled out there, and is still only on basic Tier 2 research. All right, it looks like Navio is ready to make a full push onto the homeworld. Again, Duckett has basically nothing here, no defenses, no real fleet that can contradict this. Unless NCC is able to come up with a miracle or pull a fleet here, I think we may see GG here fairly soon. Looks like Duckett is continuing to mass the Tempest vessels, now up to 74, and got a nice little over 500 fleet supply. Tech-wise, we're seeing Tier 2 on both. Nothing special there. We do see a recall available in the event that, for example, if that Rapture does get hit again and gets a little too damaged, we might see potential for recall, but as of right now, likely that won't be needed. So it looks like Duckett is just continuing to harass, continuing to kill what he can, continuing to weaken the planets in this area. So while that's useful, it is giving NCC some time to rebuild and regroup. But at the end of the day, it's probably not going to matter, ultimately, because with Dokei over here continuing to get pounded on the homeworld. Once this homeworld falls, they are going to have very little forces to deal with. Okay, we are seeing one more attempt at counter push. Um, Doke is fighting with another contingent of Tempest here, but again, we're going to watch another example of Basari regen in action. You can see the Nanite armor has been applied to the carriers. So one of the best things about having two carriers for a Basari is for a large amount of Nanite armor. Nanite armor is both an excellent heal but greatly increases the armor strength of your ship. Against any kind of directed force like this, using Nanite armor can make a ship last dramatically longer than. Now, we can see that the carrier is starting to take some sufficient damage, but the Nanite armor continues to be applied, and the Tempests are continuing to get slowly whittled down while this ship is ultimately taking care of those damage. Alright, we do see that Dose has managed to retake this asteroid and is starting to put down a little bit of defense. Let's see if NCC has been able to manage up any forces in the meantime. Okay, it looks like NCC has not been idle and has pushed a pretty aggressive forces of Conrax. At 50 Conrax, we are getting to a level where that can be a real threat. These can threaten Advent capitals pretty aggressively, and can even start taking out Tempests that aren't in massive, overwhelming orders. However, one of NCC's biggest issues is tech at this point. All the core tech structures have been taken out, and now is not even able to manage Tier 2 technologies anymore. We can see up in the north here that Docet has started some culture, just to start getting culture pushes here, primarily for economics. It's unlikely they're going to push too aggressively to utilize against enemy planets, but there is always that option. We do also see a new Rapture being built. So at this point, Docet is ramping up quite a bit in terms of fleet supply. We are starting to see Guardians on the field, with still a large contingent of Tempest and now 2 Raptures. And one of the keynotes here, and this is one of the big factors, and potentially one of the huge banes in NCC side, the Rapture has made it to level 6. The Rapture has the Malice ability, considered one of the strongest ultimates in the game currently, especially against a large swarm-like force, such as Mass Conrax. Malice basically makes it where everything in the area of the Malice, any ship that takes damage, it effectively splashes onto any other ship also in that area. Meaning that when you have, let's say, 50 ships in the area, if you do damage to one ship, you're actually doing damage to 50 ships. You magnify that over a decent amount of damage, and suddenly you're killing an entire fleet in a short amount of time. It's an excellent slayer of small ships at this point in the game, and so this Rapture has to be taken exceedingly seriously. It's likely in the next engagement with NCC is going to have to attempt to snipe this Rapture with the Conrax and take it out, or at least find a way to micro and split the forces to ensure that the Rapture does not get a Malice onto that fleet. If the Rapture manages a Malice onto that Conrax fleet, it's pretty much game over. Alright, so it looks like NCC has decided to help their ally and is bringing the Conrax forces over to Ducat's territory. And this could be well timed. We do see that the Basari capitals are pulling back. They are pulling back both into a Gauss defense and a large amount of Conrax. This actually could be an opening for NCC, attempt to take out at least one of these capitals. But no, it looks like Navio has responded well in kind and is pulling out the capitals immediately. But we can already see how much damage they take, even from just those quick initial salvos. So this is a force that Navio has to respect. Unfortunately for a Solar Empire, it looks like Docet is also ready to support his ally and is bringing a nice contingent of Tempest along with the ride. So now we're going to have a large amount of capitals and Tempest versus this Conrax force, and we'll see what happens, but I'm not feeling too hopeful for NCZ's contracts in this engagement. All right, the contracts press in pretty aggressively. They do have looks like one of the carriers. I don't know if this was intentional to hold them off, or if this was or if that was a mistake, but the contracts have gotten initial salvo up and have taken a pretty good hit onto the carrier. The Temp is now engaged, starting their micro around the contracts. The contracts are pushing forward, attempting to snipe out this carrier. There is a chance at it. We'll see if they're able to make it work. The carrier's going down. It's now crippled. Probably only need one more round for it. The phase space is just about to begin. And no, it's not enough. NCC scores a capital hit and gets at least a small reprieve, but this is still a very large force to deal with. It's possible we might see another capital go down in this exchange, but this amount of Tempest, combined with the capitals, is definitely enough to take on these contracts. And these contracts are likely not going to survive this engagement, at least not in large numbers. So the key question now is, does Navio micro their forces well enough to not lose any more capitals before these contracts die? I know it looks like NCC has seen the writing on the wall, is making a full retreat after snagging one capital and running from there. And on the south, we do see the siege of NCC's homeworld has begun. We do now see purge vessels on the way. The dedicated siege craft for Advent is now bombarding the homeworld with the Rapture. And again, this Rapture is too dangerous for any small fleet to engage with. And it looks like, with that in mind, with the sieging of both homeworlds taking place, it does in fact look like that will be the GG. And with that, we have a victory for the Bankstreet Boys. So, a hard-won victory, an excellent combination of teamwork and rushes has sealed the day. With that, that concludes another round one match of our tournament. We all thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.